now we will start our main event, and I'd like to introduce Giovanni Landi. He will be our moderator today, and he has it set up how the program will go, and I will let him explain that.
Yeah, you could call that up now.
Okay, if any of the candidates want to come up, we'll be up here. What I'd like to ask is if you wouldn't mind using the microphone. We are recording this tonight, and you can find this up on the website that we use, eprc.wordpress.com. We can give you that information later also, and then you can go back to this whenever you want, or share it with your friends that weren't able to make it today. Okay? Have a seat. Thank you very much.
I'll try speaking without the mic. If everyone can hear me fine, I'll just leave the microphone for the candidates. If you need me to use it, please just let me know and I will. Let me start out. I'm going to read a statement just so I make sure that I get the format we're going to use correct so that all of the candidates understand exactly how we're going to run. Let me start out by saying good evening and thanking everyone for coming out to CEPTA's event, and also thank you to the candidates for coming out and giving the public an opportunity to meet you and get to know you. First of all, the format for this evening. We'll start off with the candidates each being given 3 minutes to introduce themselves and just give a summary, an opening statement. The next portion of the meeting will consist of a question and answer segment from the public, and the final portion of the meeting we'll do a 2-minute closing statement from each of the candidates. The question and answer segment will be handled as follows. If you have any question, please raise your hand to be recognized. If you don't wish to publicly make your question, you could write it down and pass it in, and we'll be more than happy to read it for you. Once recognized, you will have 30 seconds to ask your question. Please do not make speeches or personal attacks. If this is being done, I will interrupt and move on to the next person with a question. I ask that questions be limited to the public. If candidates are present from other parties that plan to run for the seat, I would ask that you sign up with CEPTA and you get to participate in the next scheduled forum. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. When the time begins, Charlie and Roger will give you a green card to begin. Yellow card means you have 30 seconds left, and a red card means to stop. We'll begin with the candidate closest to me for the first question, and each candidate will get to respond in order. Then for the next question, you will get to start, and we'll alternate for each question. Just to point out again, the event will be taped and will be visible for everyone to view online. So at this point, I say we begin with the opening statements. Mr. Hammond.
Good evening. Thank you, John. Thank you, Gio. And thank you, SEPTA, and all the candidates here that have come. This is a great example of democracy in action, and it's very good that we can have so many people coming here. There's 5 candidates that are going to be selected by 16 committee people. We're 4 of the 5 candidates, and we're looking forward to running for the 134th district next, getting the selection next week. The last time I was up here was in 1991. I was running for school board. Sure. Yeah. Last time I was here was in 1991, running for school board, and yeah, okay, yeah. The issues are pretty much the same now as they were then, and I haven't changed, and the world hasn't changed either. Back in 1991, we ran as the common sense candidates. We stood for lower taxes, merit pay for teachers, which we did accomplish in that year. We kept the high school where it was rather than building a Taj Mahal. We figured that would save taxpayers money, and we're spending your money. It's not our money, it's your money, and we always remembered that. And I'll always remember it now because I've worked in the private sector for the last 33 years. I own East Penn Investment Services. I advise clients on how to invest their money. I read balance sheets, income statements, and I look at trends on a daily basis. I'm really looking forward to tackling some of the problems that we have in Pennsylvania. They're pretty obvious. They're going to be hard to tackle. I'm looking to be a good foot soldier for our governor here. He's tried a lot of reforms this year, and he hasn't had that much success. What he needs is Republicans on board that will back him strongly, not wishy-washy, but strongly, and I'm here to do that. The one thing that we did do when we were on the school board is we kept the salaries where they were because the teachers wouldn't sign. And in doing that, we got the Pennsylvania Labor Relations involved in that. And that's composed of 2 teacher union representatives and 1 other person. So we basically had a very public fight with the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board, who was trying to tell us how to pay our teachers with your money. And you're finding that the public sector right now is taking a larger and larger share of the tax dollars. The pension system is broken. The pension system needs to be fixed, and we need to get a referendum vote on all real estate tax increases here. And I think that's my red sign. Thank you.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here tonight as part of this public forum. What a great system of government we have, which allows citizens to convene publicly and express their desire to be part of the government. Isn't that amazing that we're part of this system and we're part of this country? As this is real here in Pennsylvania, here in Emmaus, it is not a reality for many other countries, so we should never take this for granted. So we must be thankful for that. We can enjoy this night and this evening thanks to our Constitution and thanks to our democracy in this country. My name is Wanda Mercado Arroyo, and I want to be your state representative. Our district, our county, our state, and our nation need elected officials who understand and share our belief in small government, individual liberty, and free enterprise. I am here to tell you, I am that person. I strongly believe in these fundamental principles. God made me a woman, and I'm glad I am a woman. That was His choice. It wasn't mine. I became a conservative, Republican, through my intellectual journey, and that was my choice, and it continued to be my choice. Why am I a Republican? Because I understand how freedom, liberties, work, and family, and it correlates to the success of individuals and the progress in our communities. Because I understand that the government cannot raise our children. It doesn't take a village to raise the children to be successful adults. It is the job of our families, of each family, to provide well and make sure to impart good and sound principles to their children. Do not leave that up to the schools. I understand that government cannot be the primary instrument in job creation. It is the private sector and small businesses, the ones responsible for this. Because I understand that the government cannot be the engine of the economy. How can they be? They can generate, they can create a favorable environment conducive to the business, and that's what we want. Because I understand that judges must not be making the laws up to fit their own political agendas, as we have seen in the past, and we continue to see. As we say, legislating from the bench, they shouldn't be doing that. So as your representative in the State House, I will carry the message that government involvement is not the solution to every problem. Quite the opposite. The only thing worse than the original problem is the government solution, as you can imagine, as you know. We have seen, we have witnessed our elected officials legislating themselves very generous perks, compensations and benefits. What was meant to be public service is now a very lucrative career. For these elected officials, the goal of staying in office overtakes the desire to serve the greater good. That is the reason why I do believe in term limits. It's really important to believe in that. We need citizens, legislators, and we need no politicians running for office. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. And I want you to know I'm pleased to be here. My name is Jim Smith. I bring to this table experienced leadership and integrity, and I want to take that to the State House on behalf of the residents of the 134th District. I'm a fiscal conservative. I am vehemently in favor of open government and transparent government, and I believe that common sense, hard work, and integrity combined together will serve the representative of the people of this district well in Harrisburg. And what I've just fed you is a bunch of rhetoric. You can train anybody to stand up here and say what Republicans want to hear. But let me tell you, what about me makes you believe that what I just said isn't just rhetoric. It's the truth. It's who I am. I told you that I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in responsible management of public money. There's something I hope that we'll get a question on later tonight called the Defined Benefit Pension Plan. And I'm going to come right out of the box tonight and let you know that if I'm elected, I will not participate in the Defined Benefit Pension Plan that legislators in Pennsylvania participate in. Last count I checked, there's 253 legislators in Pennsylvania. And last I checked, 5 have refused to participate in it based on principles. So when I tell you that I'm fiscally conservative, that I care about the management of public money, I mean it. When I tell you that I care deeply about open and transparent government, that's not just words to me. Almost 2 years ago, my township supervisors held not 1, but 4 closed-door meetings in violation of the Sunshine Act. I stepped up. Not because I sought political office, but frankly because I was angry. I was angry that at one of these meetings, a gentleman said, "I'd like to be present. Can I be present?" And they said no. They instead chose to meet 4 times, not in an executive session, closed door with themselves. They met with select groups of citizens and excluded other citizens. That's a violation of the Sunshine Act. I invested my own money. I invested my own time. My wife will tell you I have more gray hair today than I did before I started that fight. I didn't do it because it was going to make me rich. It won't. I may not ever collect a dime. I likely won't ever collect a dime on it. I did it because it was right. And I did it because I was fed up. And I'm going to take that same fight to Harrisburg on your behalf and on my family's behalf, on behalf of my kids, when I get there as your representative. And I'd ask you for your support, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself. Thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dennis Nemus. I'm very interested in securing the House of Representatives seat for 134th. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'd like to first thank my colleagues up here for their expressed interest in state government. Government today, by many people's standards, has grown to the extent it's beyond the regular citizenry of America, and certainly in Pennsylvania. I'd like to tell you that I served as a high school principal for 30 years at Northwestern Lehigh High School. One of the things you might say, well, why is that an important feature for this? That's a public sector position. I heard Jim just refer to the defined benefit issue versus defined contribution issue. As a high school principal, I could tell you that school boards are elected every 2-year cycle for a 4-year term. One of the things school boards are charged with is fiscal management. As a high school principal in 30 years, never once did the budget exceed the quoted budget proposed to the public. That's a scary and a unique component to that. And the reason I'd like to say that and how that relates to 134th. One of the things I studied is the Pennsylvania legislation. Listen to a couple of the areas that I think are deeply concerning to our public, that I think we all need to look into deeply. The one is the defined benefit contribution issue that our taxpayers deal with. Some of the issues we're dealing with tax reform. As long as I've been working in the public sector, I've heard about tax reform. And you know what, folks? I haven't seen much change in tax reform in certainly my 30 years of high school principalship. There's a different way. Both parents were very elderly, fixed income for 30 years, and I can tell you, maintaining a property tax gesture was very difficult on it. I think we need deeply in our legislative group to start being sincere about that and looking at that issue. The senior citizens, Pennsylvania currently is #2 in America with senior citizens. #2. Where did I get that from? The labor and statistics in Harrisburg, PA. We are only second to Harrisburg. With an elder population, I'm starting to worry if we don't deal with that legislatively, how are we going to control that? Privatization of our state liquor stores, that certainly has been an issue this governor, as we heard earlier from one of our candidates, has become entrenched in trying to do something about that. I think we need to take a long, hard look at it. Unfunded mandates in Pennsylvania, I've dealt with them for years. We need to find a way to control that. The unfunded mandates continue to go on, and we say to our local property owners, you know what, just take care of it. The red sign went up. I'll be glad to answer many more questions for you. Thanks for your attention and kindness.
Okay, that's it for our opening statements. I just want to reiterate to the candidates, please be mindful of the signs. We want to try to get in as many questions as we can tonight. I'll start off with the first question, and then after each of the candidates get to answer, we'll go to the audience. My question to all the candidates is, what is the #1 most important issue you see in state government, and what is your solution or your proposal to tackle this issue? We'll start with Mr. Hamill, and we'll work our way down again.
I brought some charts with me today. This is a chart of the projected states and school district pension contributions. You're looking at a 500% increase in the next 5 years in the pension obligations. This is the #1 issue facing our Commonwealth. It's the thing that's going to drive class sizes higher. It's the thing that's going to keep police off our streets, firefighters from fighting fires, because we're going to be basically paying for pensioners. Rhode Island, the solution is Rhode Island, with the Democratic legislature, which was wonderful, was able to reform the pension system and save $3 billion per year. If Rhode Island, a small state like Rhode Island can do it, Pennsylvania can do it. What you need is somebody to stand up there with the strength to push this issue. I work in finance. I know finance. I know how precious dollars are. Dollars are not precious to the government. They're precious to us. So that's the #1 issue. I won't say anything else because I don't want to cloud that issue. That is it, period. That's about it. Thank you.
Good evening again, and I'm sorry it took me longer before. But I would like to keep it short this time. I do believe the most important issue for our state right now, besides what Mr. Hamill said, is education reform. We need to make sure we tackle education. We need to make sure we educate all our students regarding their zip code. We need to make sure our districts are implementing No Child Left Behind the right way. And I know some people might disagree with me, but we need to make sure we fund the mandates that we already have. As one of the panelists said before, we need to make sure we tackle education, and we need to make sure we provide all the school system in the state of Pennsylvania what they need, #1. #2, I believe we have too many school districts. We have 501 school districts. That's way too many. We have too much bureaucracy at the school districts level. We need to make sure we tackle that as well, because all the monies and the funding is going towards funding bureaucracies at different school districts. So we need to make sure we provide for that. Number 3, we need to make sure the curriculum that our students are receiving and they're learning, we have input into that curriculum. We need to make sure all of you get involved with the school district. We need to make sure, we must make sure, parental involvement is happening all over the state. So we need to provide for that, provide opportunities for that, and make sure all the parents throughout the school districts in Pennsylvania have that. One important aspect to consider is there are plenty urban school districts. We are not an urban school district here. We don't have an urban school district here. We have East Bend, we have Parkland, but we have the Allentown School District. We have other school districts in Reading, in Berks County. We need to make sure we help those school districts and help them solve their problems, because if we don't do that, what they're experiencing right now is coming down to our school districts as well. Thank you.
I think it's integrity, period. I just think it's integrity. When the leader of the Senate, who's a Republican, accepts a trip to the Super Bowl from somebody who's looking for mining rights with Marcellus Shale, it undermines his authority to speak. And it makes it, frankly, more difficult. Every time I try to argue a political point, the minute I say Republican, he comes to mind, darn it. It's integrity. With regard to the defined benefit pension plan, that's just a perfect example where people that run for office will pad their pockets with a pension plan that's completely unrealistic and unfair. It doesn't exist in the private sector because it's unable to be funded. Our school districts, this is one of those unfunded mandates where our school districts are forced to contribute significant amounts of money in order to keep this pension plan afloat. When the market goes down, my 401k takes a downturn. But not anybody that's participating in a pension plan. In fact, while my 401k is taking a hit, I'm required to pay more in taxes to my local school district in order to satisfy the increase that was required in the defined benefit pension plan. It's a crock. Here's how you fix it. I've got a solution. I'll try to get through this quick. Number 1, no more new participants. I understand there's an argument that people have a contractual right to the benefits that they contracted for. If that's the case, fine, no more new participants in the plan. Second, for goodness sake, elect people who are willing to stand up and say, I will not participate in that plan, because it's wrong. It's integrity. It's integrity. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to just support the component of integrity. As I've made about 200 phone calls in the last 2 weeks regarding some of our local populace as to major issues, and one of the words I did hear from a lot of the folks is integrity. Translate that back to what I see as a major issue facing Pennsylvania is the issue of tax reform. The tax reform issue is burdened into a couple major issues. The mandates that drive the tax increase without relatedness to a reform in terms of how we extract those tax dollars to do that. One of the things you just spoke about is the issue of the compensation plans and pension funds. And honestly, Governor Christie in New Jersey, I believe just yesterday announced to his representative groups that he would like to see all of those defined benefit packages disappear in New Jersey. For example, one of the things that they were doing with all public employees, if you had sick days accumulated, that you could turn those in at the time of your pension and get paid for those. And apparently that was a New Jersey phenomenon. In Pennsylvania, if you look at some of the things that have been mandated by legislators, if you take just the pension issue alone, we have schools, in the high school that I ran with 800 kids 3 years ago, 800 2 years ago, 800 last year. Honestly, we were down 14 people. In public education, that was almost an unheard of phenomenon to reduce staffing. The reality is those unfunded mandates have continued to put press on those kind of sectors, which reduces, as Wanda was talking about, the quality of education for all children. When you do reduce services because of other mandates that are almost unfundable. The red sign is up. Not yet. We still got a little bit, okay. Those unfunded things do reduce the amount of quality education that takes place for all children. And then in that same breath, we have to define what is quality education for all children in the state of Pennsylvania, not some. Why do some get, for example, a baseball stadium? Why do some get a swimming pool and other children don't have access to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for our next question, Mr. Arroyo will go first. Does anyone have a question?
Yes, I would like to ask each of the candidates what their standings on vouchers.
Yes.
Did everybody hear the question?
The question.
Repeat the question on the microphone.
Yeah, the question is what are standings and vouchers, correct? Yes. First of all, I do believe that's a great component for the educational system to have vouchers. Why? Because parents will have choice where to send their children. I don't believe the argument that tells people that when you do vouchers as well as you do charter schools and you believe in that, you're taking money away from the school district. I've been in education for a great part of my life. I was an educator and I am a school administrator as well. So I do know exactly that that's part of the story. However, we need to make sure that we do as if the private companies do. We compete for the best schools, and parents, when they have these vouchers, they'll be able to take their children to the schools they believe they need to take them. For example, if you want to make sure your child receives education in terms of faith, and you want to take your child to a school of your choosing, then you have the right to do so. Because the school system will not do that for you, and we don't expect them to do that. So it's our responsibility to do that. So I believe that's a great asset to have. So I believe in that. However, I believe we need to have education reform in our state. We need to make sure we make all the teachers and all the administrators accountable to the community. They need to make sure, and I hate to hear people saying, because no child left behind, we have to teach to the test. That's so incorrect. We have to teach to the standards. Everyone has to learn something. We need to have some kind of an outline of what is the core curriculum that we need to learn. And our students the same way. So we as teachers have to be creative on how to present the material. Therefore, we need to make sure we teach not to the test. We need to teach the core basic information our students need to learn. And then we will be successful as teachers. We need to reform our educational system, and I believe we need to make sure we take a look at the way we fund the schools and we fund the school districts. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of school choice. I think there's something in us about Americans that we want to have a choice to leave what's good for what's best, especially where it concerns our children. So I'm a big fan of school choice. I think the arguments and the issues surrounding school choice and vouchers really come down to an issue or a question about funding for public schools. I think people are frustrated. I think that people are frustrated when they see a school teacher retire at 55 and live really, really well. I don't have any problem with somebody who works hard, retiring at 55 and living well. But that's not why people go into teaching. People go into teaching because they care about kids and they want the next generation to have everything that they had. Public education is a fundamental part of who we are, so it's important. But I think I just was on the phone today for about 20 minutes with the business manager of the Fleetwood Area School District, my school district. And her biggest complaint was not the fact that there exist charter schools or not the fact that there exists some competition. She says, bring it on. The problem is that these charter schools would amount to an unfunded mandate. Harrisburg says charter schools are a good thing. The problem is that the school districts have out of pocket $12,000 for every time a new charter school pops up and wants to buy a kid a laptop. And that's not fair to the school boards who are trying to budget to provide this fundamental part of who we are in a public education. So it's a complex issue, but I think I'm in favor of school choice. I'm also in favor of fiscal responsibility as it concerns our school boards. And I dislike the fact that Harrisburg throws that nut to the local school districts and makes them fight with consumer taxes and fund it. Thanks.
This is a item pretty near and dear to my heart, obviously being a public school principal for 30 years. I can tell you as a fundamental belief system, I think children should always be afforded the best education available. It's the thing that makes America great. Education has been the foundation of what America has been based on. Historically, America came in with the belief through church, by the way, in the early founding fathers, all education was founded in church belief. We got rid of things like school prayer, we got rid of things like baccalaureate services and so forth, even though our early history of education was based on that. But for the family that chooses to want a private type education for their child, or homeschool education, here's where the mandate problem comes into effect. There's a bucket of money that comes out of Harrisburg, and there's a bucket of money that comes out of local taxpayers. We need to find ways to efficiently use those dollars. I said to the two gentlemen up front as we were starting today, that my experience in education, if children can use language arts proficiently and mathematics proficiently, almost any other discipline can flow pretty smoothly. But when we take dollars and spread them very broadly into many different services that aren't fundamental, and then we add on one more thing called voucher and take additional monies to fund that voucher, what we're really doing is making that bucket of money bigger for education without ensuring the guarantee of quality education. One of the things I've come across, because I've done school evaluation for about 25 years, whether it's private schools or public schools, and one of the things I've discovered in some of the voucher systems or the privatization systems, there's no safeguard for quality. I can tell you in our public school, I had a responsibility to go to our local parents, our school board, and talk about test results, whether I talked about the quality of the program, what it did for children, what percent were going to college, and so forth. That's where my concern is when we give the tax dollars away without guaranteeing quality. Thank you.
I have a daughter that went through the Catholic schools here. I have a son that went through some of the Catholic schools, but he did go to Emmaus High School. Catholic schools are having a hard time right now staying open due to financial realities. And they do a wonderful job. My daughter came out just with one of the best educations that you could get at Central Catholic. I've donated time and effort to 7th generation school here in Emmaus, and I've never seen more involved parents and more interested students. I had a discussion with a second grader about her favorite president from the 1700s, for instance. It was a very good conversation. The word voucher is a lightning rod. Which is too bad. I think that it's very important, like our governor said, that the dollars should follow the student. Lately, that SB 241 failed, and it was to get money into the parents' hands, and that was too bad. I certainly would have voted for it. And that's why you need people that will stand strong and speak their mind when it comes to this legislature. There are Democrats, there are Republicans that want to appease, and there are Republicans that stand for their principles. And I'll stand for the principles of the dollars following the student, freedom, and getting out of a bureaucracy that's trying to keep everybody in it at the tune of $15,000 per student per year, which is the correct number when you take 8,000 students and divide it into a budget of $120 million. Thank you.
I have a quick follow-up to that. SB 241, are the candidates familiar with it? Show of hands, who would have voted for it? Okay. All right. Any?
I think I've already gotten one answer to my question from Attorney Smith. But how many of you here, by show of hands, are willing to forego the pension that is afforded a state legislature in writing?
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. When I first started talking about taking this position, I started telling my friends, and the first thing they said was, oh, geez, those pensions are going to be great. And all they think about in public servants right now is these guys are coming to rip them off, take huge pensions, retire early, and live the good life. And that's not reality. That's why I will not take any pension, whether defined benefit or defined contribution. And I'll make that statement right now at the Concerned East Penn Taxpayers Association meeting. Thank you.
Would anybody else like 30 seconds? No.
I would take the exact same position that was just rendered. I believe we've been put on this earth by a Heavenly Father for the purpose of service. I believe that in my entire career. The reality of working towards a pension in the legislature, I think, is an unnecessary benefit. I don't have any desire to be a career politician. I happen to be a citizen, a legislator, if you would. I have the opportunity to serve in this capacity, so there's certainly no intent on my part to do that, to take a pension.
Yeah, when you run for public office, I do believe that you really want to think about the greater good. You're not thinking about becoming wealthy. You're not thinking about anything for yourself. You're thinking about serving your state, serving your country. Therefore, it is important that we choose legislators who are not who are not looking for building a political career. We need to make sure we choose legislators, people running for office, that want to be there and have a term limit, and they will do so when the time comes. Thank you.
I'll say thank you very much for the question, because if you didn't ask it, I was going to have to. So thank you. And I'll take another couple of seconds because I didn't mention it during the last answer. All three of my kids this year, just for your information, are homeschooled. They were all involved and enrolled in the Fleetwood Area School District last year. It's a personal decision my wife and I made. And I would be foolish not to introduce my trophy wife of 18 years, Jennifer, who's here with me tonight and supporting me, and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks. Thanks for the time.
Any other questions from the audience?
I listened to all of these things that you've said, and I think that they're wonderful things that you're stating. You know, they express a lot of the things that are heartfelt by me. But I think one of the things that concerns me about state government, not only in Pennsylvania, but I guess in most of the other states of this United States, is the structure of our state government. We send all of you out there, we elect you, you all come from districts that have the same populations, but you're not equal. There are those who are elected who are more equal than others, and they are the ones who control state government. And one of the controls that they use is the committee system. And I've found in my experience as an attorney that I've run up against the committee system in state government many times and have been defeated by it, because there are a few people who are elected representatives who really control state government. And I'd like to hear all of you respond to that.
I share your frustration. Attorney to attorney, I share it. It's not just in state government. There seems to be this expectation that if I run for office, what's the next step? Put me on a committee. Let me control the committee. Let me control who gets in front of the committee. It's frustrating. What it does is it takes a system of government that at its core is designed to give us all equal playing field, or to put us all on an equal playing field, to level the scales. And it gives some people the power to modify those scales and make it harder for our voices to be heard. That's frustrating. I can tell you that what I believe is that a man or a woman of integrity who leads by example, who leads by a work and a history, is more effective in the ability to garnish support of others that are on the same level. So that if you have a committee person, that committee person's strength comes from twisting the arms of the lower elected. And I think that if the lower elected had somebody to lead them, to corral around, somebody who was making decisions based on principles, something I call principle-based decision-making, that we could overcome that uphill battle. That's what I'm hoping to do. Thanks for the question.
Thank you for that question. I've been either fortunate or unfortunate, depending on what side of the fence you look at it from. I've testified on a wide range of issues in our capital. And at times, on the inner circle of testifying, I was pulled in the hallway and told that is a very senior legislator and they have substantial control on this issue. I find that somewhat disheartening. I'll be testifying on January 25th in front of an oversight council in the Capitol, and it's going to deal with the issue of school transfer of athletes from one school to another, private to public. And I've already been told there are certain legislators that have more strength or skill on that. I'd like to believe when we go into that arena, we talk on a level playing field, and the component of speaking with integrity to that issue ought to be the prevailing issue where you make sense in deliberation. I was also warned that if you go down in Harrisburg as a newly elected official that you're going to be referred to as a freshman. Well, I don't know how you feel about it. There are some freshman athletes in college that make big time plays, and I would hope as a freshman legislator that that same capacity goes by experience, by strength of integrity, by the belief system of what's right for the citizens and what's right for the public service of Pennsylvania. I hope that kind of clarifies it, but I know the issue you're referring to because I've dealt with that issue in Harrisburg.
There's not a single system made by man that isn't corrupted over time. The committee system, in theory, should put experts in their field in charge of ideas concerning that field, and we should get a rather streamlined process out of it. Whether or not that happens, that's the corruption of the bureaucracy. Personally, I would love to get on the Business and Finance Committee, and I'd love to get on the Natural Resources Committee. I'm a stockbroker and financial manager, and I'm also a farmer, a tree farmer, and woodlot operator. I'm a trained forester, and I'm a 32-year kayak guide on the Lehigh River. I have skills and I have interests that nobody else has. I'd love to get on the Natural Resources Committee and the Business and Finance Committee and use the committee system to our advantage and not fight it. Thank you.
I do believe that character counts, and as Jim said, integrity is very, very important. One draws their strength from your belief system. If you have a strong belief system, you will be a strong person and you can accomplish anything you are there to accomplish. So I believe that if you have that strong belief system, you will be able to accomplish much regardless of the committees that you are part of and so forth. So I believe that.
I'm going to read a question from the audience. Do you have a record of speaking out against property tax increases at your school board meetings, county commissioner meetings, at taxpayer association, or other public venues? Please give examples. I believe you're first.
I do have a record, obviously, being in a public school environment. The things that we've been asked to do sometime in managing a school budget, particularly a high school budget, which is pretty diverse. In all instances, the budgets I've presented have gained, I think, pretty strong community support in a relatively conservative community in terms of expenditure. We stayed with some fundamentals. I think the management of that has been consistently strong, and by the end of the fiscal year, my budgets have always been pretty well sustained. I have testified in front of a number of legislative committees in Harrisburg on mandates and suggested that as long as they're not going to be funded, we not move forward with the mandate. In a number of instances, I opposed certain mandates, whether they're going to be funded or not, because all of them are extracting dollars from the local taxpayer or on the statewide budget tax structure. I've served on a number of board of directors in Pennsylvania College. I've served on the Middleburg Board of Associates. I've served on the Pennsylvania Scholastic Athletic Association. In no case has I ever been responsible in letting a budget go over the limits that what we had set up. We've done it with fiscal responsibility. I happen to be a fiscal conservative in terms of expenditure process. I believe the track record I've had with those kind of agencies have been very, very successful. So I have spoken in terms of getting committee support for those kind of budgets and been able to maintain both in the public and private sector.
The last time school taxes were lowered in East Penn, and not by a little amount, was in 1993. I was vice president of the school board, and I was head of the Business and Finance Committee. We looked at what we could spend. We controlled our expenses. We didn't build a Taj Mahal, and we accomplished a lowering of taxes. We would have done more if there weren't a double counting of $1 million at the time. A month ago, I spoke at the school board meeting. There's 5 school board directors here. It's nice to see them about this exploding pension issue. Whether or not some of them wanted to hear me or not is another matter, but I spoke, and I spoke up for us, for me, and for you, our interests. On another matter, I did sue the Lower Macungie supervisors successfully 4 years ago, including a developer that was on one of the boards there, and I kept Lehigh County Authority from taking land from me, along with the Lower Macungie Board of Supervisors. I'll stand up for what's right, and anybody that knows me knows that, and it's my pleasure to be able to say I actually lowered taxes, and I'd do it again. We'd find a way.
I will state clearly and simple. I do believe in low taxes, being fiscally responsible, and make sure before you take any action, you do research and check out the consequences. Keep it simple, everybody understands, and make sure you tell everybody else in your committees, in your organizations, what you stand for, and make sure you persuade others on your thoughts.
I have spoken. In fact, last year, Fleetwood Area School District had open meetings about budget issues. And that's when I started to understand a lot more about this defined benefit pension plan. It's hard to say. I should have it down. But it's the defined benefit pension plan. I started to learn more about it as I was going to these meetings, and I started to study it. I handed out a graph. Many of you have. If you don't, there are more up here. It demonstrates, I asked the school district to provide for me, the Fleetwood Area School District, provide for me the largest 3 unfunded mandates that concern you and your board. And this is what they gave me. They gave me charter schools, they gave me special education, and they gave me the defined benefit pension plan. They call it the employer share of the pension. It's really the taxpayer share of the pension. The first 2, the charter schools and the special education, over the course of a couple of years, grew modestly. But if you look at the last section, the employer share of the pension, and this is why I went and I spoke in front of the Fleetwood School Board on a couple of occasions last year, this number is going atmospheric. In 2008, 2009, it was budgeted at $733,000. In the next year, 800,000. The next year, 1 million. This year, it is budgeted at $1.48 million. Do you know what Fleetwood's struggle last year was? The budget deficit? It was $1.4 million. And next year is projected to be $2.2 million and go up, skyrocket from there. I'm passionate about this issue. I'm passionate about the burdens that these unfunded mandates have put on our school boards, and that these school board directors are forced to defend these kind of costs. Thanks.
Any questions from the audience?
Just to get off the topic a little bit, leaving school's pretty hard. How can, well, it's just a brief answer from each would be sufficient. How can Pennsylvania best take advantage of the growing Marcellus shale and natural gas industry? And along with that, are the suggested problems associated with it, like tainted water supply, are they overstated, understated?
Did everybody hear the question? Okay. Mr. Hammond.
The Marcellus shale is the most wonderful thing to happen to Pennsylvania in a long time. 5 years ago, there was a chance that the United States was going to be running out of natural gas. It was the fracking that caused all of a sudden our energy costs to go down. 60% of the people in this country heat by natural gas. It would have been a complete disaster without that. That being said, as a river kayak guide and somebody that holds natural resources near and dear to my heart, there hasn't, the problems with Marcellus have been more sloppiness, which are being solved by private companies dealing with the problem rather than an inherent issue of fracking fluid getting into the water supply. Halliburton, one of the directors of Halliburton recently drank a cup of fracking fluid that they're using. So, and it's it's encased, it's triple encased, and there's been no evidence that it has been leaking. That the water that goes down into the ground at 10,000 feet has been leaking into the groundwater. What has been a problem is getting rid of the waste, and private companies are dealing with ways of getting rid of the waste. So thank God we do have this great natural resource.
I would say it is great to have this natural resource, and it's really a great and excellent source of energy. What we need to do is make sure that businesses involved with this project use technology in order to prevent anything from happening. Number one. Number two, make sure the government doesn't mix too much with the private business in terms of letting the private business develop this excellent source of natural gas. We need to make sure that is completely developed, because then the business will take care of the safeguards that needs to be put in place for safety issues.
I have a bachelor's in science and math, but I'm no scientist, I'm no geologist. I don't know the answer as to whether or not the fears are overstated or understated. What I do know is this, that there is a proper limited scope of government as a role in our lives. And one of the things that falls within the proper scope is making sure that our infrastructure is safe, and that it's profitable for us, that we have it there to use. Bridges, roads. I also believe that the government, within its proper role, should investigate and determine, unencumbered by special interest groups, the honest impact that this drilling has on the neighbors, on the community, on everybody in Northeast Pennsylvania that's got a well. I think they owe it to us to do that. So I'm a little bit fearful that when you have politicians who are on the committee that's overseeing this investigation, who are taking trips to the Super Bowl, that are funded by people that are involved in the Marcellus shale, I'm all for private enterprise. Keep the playing field level. Don't cheat. by buying my senator off. That's all I'm saying. Integrity matters, and it matters particularly where you have an investigative committee designed for the purpose of understanding whether it's overstated or not. Thanks for the question.
If you received one of the yellow sheets that I brought with some of the issues that I've identified that I think are critical in Harrisburg, one of them I noted is Marcellus Shale. I've talked to two people of science backgrounds that have some knowledge and some interest in this issue, and I got two opposing opinions. One was that there is no safety risk, and another said there is a safety risk. I go into initiatives when I hear no safety risk with somewhat of a skeptical ear. And I do that for this reason. It doesn't mean you say no to it. It means that we've had BP do major drilling in the Gulf, and you know and I know what happened to that. Supposedly, every safety feature was occupied. The fishermen in that Gulf, which I happen to be a pretty avid fisherman, suffered some income loss, and BP said they quickly took care of that. I would want to go into it with a clear understanding of what the scientific data says before we make a decision. I was asked last week by one of our local residents, if you go forth and support the continued Marcellus Shale drilling, what safeguards would you bring to Pennsylvania? And I believe the issue of tax, do we drive business out from Pennsylvania with more and more taxes, or do we think of some fee structure in terms of the amount of gas that's extracted that can be used in cleanup requirements or environmental protection kind of issues? I think there's a way to do it. I don't think you say no to an opportunity that brings jobs to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a struggling state with employment. As I looked at the distribution area, believe it or not, Altoona is one of our better areas for employment right now. The little town of Mount St. Mary, where some of the drilling has occurred, there's an auto dealer just about out of business. They're selling more white pickup trucks than you can shake a stick at. The only thing that worries me a little bit, if you drive up there, you'll see a lot of license plates say Oklahoma and Texas. I'm hoping the jobs are Pennsylvanians, not against those two states. But the reality is I hope Pennsylvanians get some of the benefit. Thank you.
Show of hands, I have a quick question. Raise your hand if you've read the Pennsylvania State Constitution. Okay. Any further questions from the audience?
Yes, actually a two-point question here. There's been some movement in Harrisburg about reducing the size of the legislation. And also, I'd like to hear from each candidate what your position is on term limits.
Did everyone hear the question from the audience?
No.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question.
No, it's Mrs. Zuckerberg's turn.
Can you repeat, please, the question? I was one of them.
What is your position on reducing the size of government? I think there are I heard 253 representatives right now. I believe there's a move afoot that's been going on for 10 years by former Senator Michael Pate, was trying to pass legislation to reduce the number of districts, and in doing so reduce the number of representatives and senators. And then the second question is, what is the position of each of the candidates on term limits?
Okay. The second question, I have made myself clear. I believe in term limits. I do believe strongly on that, and I believe it's important because we need to make sure there are so many politicians and career politicians, and they want to build a career. Going to Harrisburg to, instead of serving the people, they want the people to serve them. So, as you know, some of our legislators have got paid increases, benefits, and pension plans and all that, and they're not thinking about the taxpayers. We're paying for that. So, I mean, I'm very honest, and I believe in term limits. I haven't decided what term limits, though, but I'm thinking about that, so I will let you know how many terms by state representative and senators. So that's the second question. On the first question, we need to think about the number of people that each one of the state representatives is serving. So if we, let's say, put 2 districts together, 3 districts together, we need to think, and we need to research, and we need to talk to the people. We need to talk to all of you. And we need to know exactly how do you feel about that. Will you be represented? Do you feel represented if that happens? So that's the key question. Number 2, what are we going to be accomplishing? What are the savings for us? What are we saving? How much money will we be saving out of the budget? Number 3, how will that impact our communities? How will that impact our school districts? So those are the key questions we need to ask in order to be able to make a decision. I can tell you right now, I believe that we can merge, and we can merge 2 or 3 districts, but I will be responsible for me to tell you that, because I need to do more research. I need to find out exactly if there's any other states that have done so. We need to make sure we take a look at that and see what happened, what's the plus and what's the negative impact of that to happen.
John, I appreciate that question, and if you don't mind me saying so, John was the gentleman who stood up in the Richmond Township Supervisors meeting and said, let me attend those meetings, and they told John, no. John's a good man. The question that the part-time, reduction in the size of the legislature, I'm not sure I like the idea of reducing the size of the legislature for this reason. A state representative currently represents X number of people. I don't know what. 60,000 people. If we cut it in half, you'd be representing 120. Your contact with that person would be reduced in half. Is that your access to him? I would fear would be reduced in half. What I am in favor of is looking at a part-time legislature. I love the idea of cutting our pay in half, having to be still responsible to the voters, and for goodness sake, just let's get it all done in a matter of a couple of months and go back to working. I like that idea. Term limits. I think there is such a thing as term limits. They're elections. That's my response to that. I think that what we're lacking, however, is a knowledgeable voter base. You, the people that are here tonight, are a few. Are the few that care enough to spend your night in a social hall to hear people tell you what they believe, how they stand on issues. And it's unfortunate there's not more involvement. And this is a great crowd, but it's a shame there's not more people out here to listen to the positions we take on issues that are important to the voters. So that's my position on it. Thanks.
John, thanks for that question, because I think in my experience in dealing with the long-term politician in Harrisburg, there's certain embeddedness that doesn't permit change to occur easily. So therefore, I believe in term limits. In saying term limits, particularly for the House, one of the changes I would favor dramatically is that we move away from a 2-year term to a 4-year term. And there's a reason for that. I heard one of the Fox News commentators the other day remark, you realize, and he was saying this to the American public, he says, you realize that Obama's been campaigning for the last year and for this upcoming year to re-win the political election for president. And honestly, the 2-year term, and I've served in a variety of committees and directorships with terms of anywhere from 2 years to 6 years. My experience is the first year you learn a lot. You obviously go in hopefully with some wisdom and understanding and research before you go into that. But I would like the idea of changing it to a 4-year limit for the House, and I know that's embedded in a lot of history. I do believe in term limits. I've already declared very clearly I have no desire to be a career politician. I would like to serve, at least in its current capacity, a few terms, but certainly not 20 terms as some have done here in Pennsylvania. The issue of representation, I happen to agree with, I don't think we need full-time legislators. I happen to believe that we have people that serve in a half-time capacity. Knowing my personality style, if you notice my resume, I typically as a high school principal work 60, 70-hour weeks. That was my record. My record was also, and I'd state that very clearly to the community, I will call you back the same day you call. That doesn't mean if I get a recording that you're in, that means I might not contact you, but I made a vow to myself and to the community that I owe you a call back the same day. Thank you.
I agree a lot of what Jim Smith said here on both term limits and reducing the size of the legislature. Making the legislator a part-time legislator is perfect. That'll keep career politicians from relying solely on the government take. Keep them honest. Make sure that they have a life. One of the problems with reducing the size of the legislature is that places like Berks County, which is all rural, will not get as much representation if you do reduce the size. So I'd say keep the size exactly where it is. One of the problems is power. Some of the power would go to the entrenched bureaucracy that's in Harrisburg and away from direct representation. But I think that's a major. I think that's one of the killing points of reducing the size of the legislature. As far as term limits, I'll go for three. I'll go for 3 limits and quit. And I would agree with term limits here. So tough decision, but I would vote for that. So thank you.
Okay, I have a written question from an economic point. What would you do to help increase employment within the Commonwealth? Mr. Smith, did everyone hear the question?
It's what would I do to increase employment throughout the Commonwealth? And I think that as a general rule, and I think everybody up here ought to be in agreement with this, that you take government and remove it as far away as you possibly can from my ability as a business owner to grow my business. I've been in business for myself. I started my own law firm 6 years ago. I remember telling my wife that in the weeks leading up to the decision to leave the firm that I was with, this may not work out. And she said, that's okay. We're in it together. Let's do it. 6 years ago this past Thanksgiving, that was when I left the firm and started my own practice. I've been in business for 6 years, and I can't tell you the frustration I feel on at least a monthly basis in trying to get ahead and trying to reinvest the money that I earn in things like we just spent $6,000 on a copier, scanner, fax, everything else. I hope it someday drafts things for me. But it's those kind of investments or reinvestments that I hope to do, and the tax burden is just killing me. The taxes that I pay, not just the income taxes, but the employment taxes, the security taxes, FICA and all that, it is burdensome. If I had more money at the end of the day, it wouldn't be going in my pocket. I'd be growing the firm. I'd be hiring another paralegal. I'd be hiring another attorney. I'd be doing a little more work in the community, perhaps, in order to get my name out there. That's the way that private sector is supposed to grow the economy, and that's the way that you create more jobs and increase employment across the state. Thanks.
As Thomas Jefferson said many, many years ago, the government that governs least governs best. And I think to some degree, Pennsylvania government has governed to the extent that it has made business hard to succeed in Pennsylvania. And one of the things that has bothered me deeply is the tax structure that we continue to burden businesses with. And I look at one of our neighboring states, the state of Delaware. Delaware has been able to attract, for a small state, they've been able to have one of the lowest tax rates for an individual resident to live in that state, and at the same time, they've been able to, if you notice, a lot of credit cards that you're sending your payments to are in the state of Delaware. There's a reason for that. They've made it very agreeable for business to open up at least what they would call their corporate office in the state of Delaware. I think we in Pennsylvania need hard to make places in Pennsylvania very amicable to live. Nothing of steel. My dad was a steel worker for 38 years. I worked my way through college by being a steel worker. And one of the things I discovered in watching the steel industry slowly deplete to the extent from a 22,000 employee company down to zero-employee company. It's the kind of industry that kept the Lehigh Valley deeply indebted to an opportunity to make a decent living. So I would urge in legislature that we move towards ways to make Pennsylvania businesses profitable and watch the methodology by which we're taxing them away from the state. Thank you.
I've achieved the designation of certified financial planner and accredited tax preparer. I do my own taxes and I do other people's taxes to a limited degree, although I hate doing it. First, one thing I'd love to, when you fill out your Pennsylvania tax reform, there's very, very few deductions. That rate that you pay is basically the rate that you pay everything. So, you know, look at increasing deductions. But most importantly, I would work hard to make Pennsylvania a right-to-work state. There's no better way of increasing jobs than doing that. If you look at other states that are right-to-work states, they're the states that are growing. If you look at states like Michigan, with Detroit in it, that are heavily unionized and regulated, those are the ones that are stifling business. That's the number one thing. I would support most, if not all, of the Pennsylvania Right-to-Work Committee's recommendations, and basically seek some guidance from them on that and be a leader in this. The other thing is make sure that Marcellus is used properly and it is extracted. And I guess the other thing is I did a lot line adjustment. I saved a 20-acre farm along Little Lehigh Creek 4 or 5 years ago. I did a lot line adjustment in order to save it. Between protecting it from the takings of two different governmental bodies and a representative of a government body, and going through the hoops, it cost me $57,000 to do a simple 2-lot line adjustment. Insane. It drove me nuts. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. I'm very knowledgeable about government regulations, and boy, I'd like to do away with everything that can be done away with. Thank you.
How can we increase employment here in Pennsylvania? It's very simple. Lower taxes. Make Pennsylvania a very friendly, conducive to business type of environment for the state. Send legislators down to Harrisburg that will work on that. Help and work hard to make Pennsylvania a right-to-work state. That's really critical. Once we have that, we can take a look at states like Texas. It's a right-to-work state. They're doing very well. The economy is flourishing. They have a lot of jobs being created. We can do the same thing. So we need to work hard on that.
Show of hands question again. Would you support right-to-work legislation? Another question. What is your position on government taking property from private citizens and turning it over to another private citizen to use for profit? No.
Jim must have a real strong opinion on this one because he's ready to grab the microphone. I quoted to you Thomas Jefferson's quote of government that governs least governs best. And I have a deep concern when a private citizen has some property, and we just heard Mr. Hamill talk about what he had to go through with some property preservation. I am opposed to just unilateral opportunities to take land and use it in some other format for another private citizen. I think it creates immense legal battles. I think it creates some property divisional issues in the community that creates hardship for the community. And it really, I think, strains the local government's potential to do what's best for its citizenry. As a general rule, I would oppose that. There has to be some overwhelming reason, even for government on a priority basis, to take land for the general welfare of its citizenry. To me, that's a paramount issue. Land ownership, the very fundamental, the tax structure we have in America is based still on the historic component land ownership is some measurement of the individual's wealth. And I know that's changed pretty dramatically, but I would, as a general principle, oppose that kind of concept of taking land for another citizen's benefit.
Well, I've been the recipient of government agencies trying to take land from me, and it's no fun. I fought it well, and I fought it successfully. Once again, it's the encroachment of government on private citizens, and if you're a landowner, you're a target. That being said, there probably are some necessary takings to be done, and that's a hard thing to say. I would support it only in the most extreme case. But generally, I'm for freedom and for land ownership, and the king owns his castle.
I will keep it short. I will oppose it strongly, and I believe there needs to be legislation in order to protect us from that from happening. It must be a very, very strong case built for that, but I strongly believe that shouldn't happen in our country.
Dennis says it's my turn. The simple short answer is it is outside the proper scope of government, and that's the short answer. How many people in this room have a bank account at your local bank, or maybe a mattress with some cash in it, about $57,000, labeled "money to save my real estate"? I see no hands, and neither do I. It's fundamentally, you do. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. And that gets back to the issue the gentleman in the back had raised earlier, where there seems to me to be this horribly unlevel playing field. If you have the government bearing down on you, they've got lawyers, they've got everybody wants to get on their bandwagon, and then you've got the taxpayer, who typically doesn't have the wherewithal to stand up and fight against the big boys. At my firm over the past 6 years, one of the reasons I went out on my own was to be able to decide which cases I took and which cases I didn't. And I can tell you that more often than you would think, I was on the small guy end of what's happening. I've represented the family of a deceased man who was killed by a DUI drunk driver against an insurance company. That case, they kicked me around for 5 years. That was already turned down by another lawyer before I came along. And I met with the grandfather of these kids, 12 and 9 years old, that were left behind. And my heart was tugged at it. And I fought. I fought for 5 years. I felt like a chihuahua on the ankle of a Goliath, kicking around, and I just hung on. And we fought. 5 years later, I'm pleased to say that we've resolved that, and that the kids have something, and we've been able to successfully hold the drunk driver accountable. I hope to bring that same fight, that same dedication to principles to Harrisburg to fight for you and taxpayers like you, Rob.
We'll do 2 more questions, and then we'll have closing statements.
The question that I'm going to ask is a question that I don't often ask, but it's a question of electability. The Democrat candidate is likely the guy who ran against Doug Reichley last time, Patrick Slattery. And I've been on the receiving end of one of Mr. Slattery's campaign, and I can tell you he's going to run one of them, because he did against me and he did against many other fine people, run one of the most dishonest, sleazy, basically outright outrageous campaigns you've ever seen. Why are you the best candidate to defeat Mr. Slattery in the 134th district?
Mr. Hamel, you're first.
I know Mr. Slattery relatively well. I've worked on some boards with him. I attended a fundraiser for Mr. Slattery. It's filled with Democrats. nice people. I was the only Republican in the room. The overwhelming message that Mr. Slattery got was you have to do something about this pension issue. Mr. Slattery turned around and then worked with the teachers union, which, you know, very intimately to support the candidates for school board that got elected. So, you know, I'm looking at the guy thinking, he's a hypocrite. He's not going to do what he says he's going to do. He has people pleading with him that know him to solve this pension issue. So, you know, the issues stand by themselves. He doesn't stand on the issues, so let him do what he wants to do. We're going to be talking about the issues. And the issues are the survivability of our way of life in Pennsylvania.
Well, I don't have the pleasure of knowing Mr. Patrick Slattery. I'm looking forward to meeting him. But I do believe I'm the best person for the job for many reasons. Number one, character counts, integrity counts. I stand for maybe what he doesn't stand for. I stand for small government. I stand for lower taxes. I stand for free enterprise. I stand for principles that helps our families, that helps our children, that helps our education. I stand for all those principles, which we believe as a conservative party and as a Republican party. So I believe it's going to be easy to win, because if he doesn't stand for those principles, what does he stand for?
Sitting here jotting down notes, I think that I can beat him. I think I can beat him for this reason. I think that I walk the walk, I talk the talk. My life and my history and what people know about me, the people who know me, the people that are in this room who know me, know that I fight. Know that I stand up for what's right, not because it helps my pocket, but because it's the right thing to do. And I think that the people of this district, the people across Pennsylvania are longing, I'm longing, to cast a vote, not because they're an R or a D, but to cast a vote for somebody because they make decisions based on what's right. I long for that opportunity, and I suspect that there's a lot of people in this room who share that view, who share that longing, that desire. I'm that candidate. Not because I've got a long line of wealthy Republicans. My father's here tonight. Thanks, Dad. My dad was an electrician. He worked for 40 years, 40 plus years for the same company. My mom is here too. I'm sorry, Mom. She's a homemaker.
You're in trouble now.
I tell people I have more blue in my collar than I have in my blood. And I mean that, and I think that resonates with people, not just with Republicans. I think it resonates with hardworking Democrats. I think it also resonates with independents. And in this district, you've got 18,000 roughly registered Republicans. You have, is that up?
No.
Okay.
Yellow.
Let me go back. You have 18,000 roughly registered Republicans. You have 16,000 registered Democrats. So you have a $2,000 lead, or 2,000 voter lead. Wish I had a $2,000 lead. But here's the kicker. You've got about a 6,000 registration of independents. Those are the people we need to convince that I'm worthy of their vote, that I can be trusted with their vote, and that I'll work hard for them when I'm their legislator.
Mr. Smith, dad of the attorney, I just want to say this. He was very nice in handing over the microphone a little while ago when he tried to skip turn. Now, I'm going to compliment him for that. You know, in the Republican presidential debates, they haven't been very complimentary of each other. And my correspondence says, let's not beat each other up in the public arena. Let's work together for a common goal. But what honestly I would like to emphasize, the work ethic I have is a long record of work ethic. It's one of sincerity and it's a commitment to serve. The fundamental value I've always held, and that was as a young child, I was always taught the value of service. You've asked a question about retirement benefit. I don't have a desire. I made my position very clear on that. I believe deeply that we need to serve. whatever Mr. Slattery wishes to campaign for. I certainly am open to any conversation he would like about the integrity of the political office of House of Representatives. I'm approachable. I think in 30 years as a high school principal, I'm told the average principal stay in a high school in Pennsylvania is 5 years, and for superintendent of schools is 3.2 years. In many instances in Harrisburg, I was told that that's the political lightning rod that exists in education, those two particular positions, for a variety of reasons. I think the approachability I've used, I'd be willing to defend in any arena. As I mentioned to you earlier, the fact that when I got a phone call, as busy as a day I may have had, I made it a point, whether it was at 6 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, you were guaranteed you got a phone call back from me. Those are points I would rather emphasize the positive of service, and I'd put that against any record that exists out there, including his if he wants to go in a competitive market about being politically downplaying particular strengths. I think the strength I bring is a commitment. Thank you.
I think that'll be the last question for the evening. We want to leave some time for meet and greet after the event. So we'll go into closing statements. At this point, it'll be 2 minutes apiece, starting with you, Ms. Loria.
First of all, I believe that character counts, integrity is important, and it's not dependent on circumstances. So I promise you, as a state representative, I will stand for those values, number one. Ethics and honor must be a basic qualifier for anyone to run for office who seeks to serve public office. I pledge you here tonight, I will meet the highest standards in these regards. I would like to make sure you understand that yes, I am a conservative Republican. I believe in limited government with unlimited possibilities. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in the individual liberties. And I believe that we are Americans. We have the same interest. We want to go around to do things differently. We need to make sure we pick the right person to do the right job. And actions speak louder than words. And I make sure that once you find out about me and you learn about what I've done and what you learn about my record and you learn about the skills that I bring to the table, you will see how my actions and my integrity and my character will be stronger than anything else. And I can tell you and I can promise you I will stand for my principles and my values when I go to Harrisburg to represent you, the people. We pay the taxes. We are the ones here in the community who are struggling to make sure we meet our ends meet and we pay all county taxes, school taxes, and everything. So we need to make sure our voices are heard. Some people have louder voices, some people speak with less louder voices. I need to make sure that my voice is heard and your voices are heard. So I promise you I will stand for you in Harrisburg and I won't forget who elected me.
I promise that if I'm elected, I'll serve this district and every single individual in the district, like-minded and not, with integrity. That I will work as hard for you as I have any of my clients over the past 13 years of practice. I'm a consensus builder in addition. I serve as the vice president of Hope Rescue Mission. It's a nonprofit homeless shelter, faith-based homeless shelter in the city of Reading that doesn't take one dime of federal funding. It's funny, somebody held up a yellow flag in the back and instantly I think, oh, time's up. I represent, or I also serve on the Executive and Finance Committee of the Berks County Bar Association. The Bar Association, I don't know if a lot of lawyers tend to be on the left side of the spectrum. We had a meeting last Thursday morning, and it was a great meeting. We wrestled with something for an hour, and in the end, I'm pleased to say that the decision we came to, the recommendations we made to the whole board, were very Republican in principle. I'm a consensus builder, and I hope to be able to take the experience that I've developed over the course of the years of my practice the life experience that I've had having 3 great kids and a good wife, the other one, the service experience that I've engaged in my community, and I hope to take that dedication and experience to Harrisburg and serve you well, and frankly to make you, the people who pay us, pay the legislature, proud. Thanks.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out this evening. I know it's one more night on some of your agendas to be out, and I deeply appreciate that. I particularly appreciate the fact there were 4 of us that were able to make it tonight and just express a variety of views that we think are going to be important to address for Pennsylvania. I'd like to say thank you to John Dunches for helping to organize, along with the CEPTA group, and in a service to the community, so thank you. How about we give them a round of applause? I will vow this to you. The work ethic I've held my entire life, I would bring to this legislative seat if I were fortunate enough to win the endorsement of the primary as well as the party. I believe in service to the people. I remain visible. I remain open to accessibility. I believe some of the things that have taken place in Pennsylvania politics haven't been in the best interest of the citizenry. The little yellow sheet I handed out has some of the major issues I truly believe need work in Pennsylvania. Some of the issues of mandates, the Marcellus Shale, as Mr. Hammer referenced, I think is an important one that make sure we do what's right, make sure that we look for the employment opportunities for the Pennsylvania taxpayer and Pennsylvania resident. The things that are unfunded mandates are dramatic in Pennsylvania. I think we need to look long and hard. As a legislator, I would vow to you that would be a central part of my belief system. Further, I've been fortunate enough to be a resident of the Lower McCounty Township for 33 years. It's a great township. It's one that has grown at a dramatic pace, sometimes too fast for the ability to stay up with the infrastructure, or sometimes the infrastructure may be pushed to development. So I think those are all issues we're going to look at. I believe deeply in this position. I promise you this, if I'm elected candidate, I will serve diligently.
I'm really proud to be up here with 3 other candidates that are basically citizen legislatures, and we might be making history today in the state by talking about not accepting the pension as a legislator. I don't know, I haven't heard this anywhere else, and I thank CEPTA for bringing out the best in us in protecting the citizens. Saying that, the laws that I will be obeying are the laws of economics and the Constitution of Pennsylvania. On the basis of obeying the laws of economics, we have to get our expenditures under control. We cannot print money. Every dollar that we spend wastefully, we will not have for our way of life. I call for a referendum on all property tax increases. I call for pension reform and entitlement reform, including defined contribution plans, and we want to see that the pension reform does reflect the private sector benefits and health benefits. That's the most important thing. We're choking right now in government. I'd like to see the privatization of as much as that we can in government, and I'd also love to see the right to work passage in Pennsylvania. It's about time. We have a Republican governor, we have a Republican House, we have a Republican Senate. It's time that we start passing Republican values. Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank all the candidates. If we could just have a round of applause for them. Thank you also to the public for coming out and for the excellent questions. I was worried I was going to have to make them all up myself. So thank you again for coming out. And John, do you have anything you'd like to say?
You covered it pretty well. I want to again thank all the candidates for coming out, and especially for the citizens that are coming and took interest in this. It is all you, really. So thank you, and please join everyone here to meet and greet, personally talk to the candidate of your choice. Enjoy the rest of the night. Please here. There's a